All right. So can everyone see my screen okay? Hopefully so. Okay. So in this presentation, there are potentially going to be a number of individuals that I will need to impersonate. And in order to show you an end-to-end process for request management, I actually believe it's just one individual that I'm going to be mimicking today. So I'm not picking on you. I just thought it might be helpful to maybe do this in the form of a perspective of someone who would be fulfilling some of these tasks. But before we get into request management, I think what will be useful is to graphically show you how requests are set up, just because it is completely different from how an incident is set up, change, or any other types of tickets. And it's important that you understand the workflow. And so we're going to be touching base on questions like, what kind of record should I be accessing? Which records should I be looking at, and which records should I fulfill? So let me share this screen here. And so this is going to be a graphical overview of request management. Now, over here to the far left-hand side, we have what's called a request. The request is going to be a placeholder or the parent ticket for the entire request, and that may be submitted by your fellow users or employees. And so when you're in the portal, which we will generate a request later in the training session, what will happen is that there's going to be this request that is made. And this is going to be your umbrella ticket, or it's going to be your parent ticket. So I say umbrella. And so within that request are potentially one or more items, depending on what type of request was submitted. And so in this example that we're showing here, we have 2 request items that are associated with this one request. And this is what we call a RITM. A RITM is a series of digits. And so that is essentially the item that the customer or the end user is actually asking for. So let's go ahead and say in this example that they want an application. So they want Acrobat DC, let's say. And so that is what the request item is going to show. Now, how we provide you this item that you requested is going to be captured in the actual catalog task. And so to get you the application, one task may be to order the application. And once that task is completed, the next task would potentially be to push it or actually get it installed on the computer or the laptop. Now, alternatively, let's go ahead and do something a little bit more basic. So in this request item, let's say I'm requesting for someone to give me access to a folder. Well, in that case, there's really only one task associated with it, which is, of course, to grant you access to that folder. And so these tasks here, that's actually going to be what the fulfiller will work on. And so you won't need a fulfiller to necessarily access the RITM or even the request. You will only ever really need to deal with the actual service catalog task. And they may be assigned to various groups. So for example, going back here, the actual application that's being requested for, perhaps one group may be the one to order it, and maybe a separate group would be the one to actually push it or install it on the laptop. Now, once all of these tasks that are associated with the request item are completed, the RITM or the request will also show as completed. And as soon as all of the tasks are completed and both of the request items have been closed, you will then see the request itself show as closed as well. So this is essentially a system that will show and will set up and will show you all of the related items associated to the request, but again, really only having to focus on the task. And so I will show you what a request will look like, and I'll also show you what a request item will look like as well during this training session, but you're really only going to need to focus all of your energy and attention right here. Now, some task or some request may involve approvals. And so if there's approval associated to the request item, let's say that we're asking for a brand new laptop. So there might be an approval associated to that request item. And so no task will actually be generated until this request item or this RITM has been approved. And if it's rejected, of course, the process would end right here. The fulfillers will never see a task, and so they won't have to concern themselves with anything. And so if, on the other hand, the request item is approved by the manager or whoever it was that received the request for approval, then the task will be generated. So the key point here is that you're never really going to have to work on something until it's approved, or if there is an automated approval system associated with that particular request. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go over just one more slide here, and we're going to touch base on the life cycle for the service catalog task. So they have the following states within their life cycle. The first one is going to be open. This is going to be
do you ever listen to these ServiceNow trainings? Yeah. I don't know how to get the sound to work.
I'm sorry.
No, don't worry, Jackie. I just muted her. Don't worry.
Okay. Oh, wonderful. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. So going back to the life cycle. So open is going to be when the initial state of when it was first created. We have a work in progress. This means that the work has begun on the item. And then, of course, we have close complete. And this means that the tag has been completed. So no further work can be performed. Now, we're really only going to concern ourselves with more or less with these three options, but just be aware that there is another option, which is close canceled. And this is going to be typically done by the requester themselves. They've canceled it for whatever reason. And so at that point, that is where the request would stop if they've decided to cancel it. So I'm going to stop here for just a moment. And ask if there's any questions in the chat before I move forward into the system.
I have no questions in the chat, Jackie, so I don't know if anyone has any questions at this moment, but nothing.
Beautiful. Great.
All right.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's move forward then. In this case, I'm currently logged into the system as Tariku Mini. Now, Tariku is responsible or is a fulfiller of various service catalog tasks to access Workspace. Now, to access Workspace, what you're going to do is you're going to click here in the navigator and click on Octo Helps Workspace. And that's going to be where we're going to hang out for the rest of the session until we get over to the portal. So there's going to be a greeting here. Hello, Tariku. And the records that Tariku is responsible for will appear in the overview panel here. So right here, you can actually see that there is a service catalog task that is associated and assigned to Tariku specifically. And so when you click on that, you'll actually see that there is a clickable service catalog task that you can click on, and it kind of gives you a little brief overview of what the service task is. Now, at the right-hand corner here, you can also see a brief overview of what might be coming up today and tomorrow. And you can kind of see that there are some overdue tasks that are also clickable. And when I do click on this, it does take me to another window that will show you all of the items that might be overdue. And click out of this real quick and head back home. Okay. Underneath that, if there are any quick links, they would be shown here. And then, of course, we have anything that was recently viewed underneath this right here. And these guys are also clickable. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on My Team's Work. And we're going to see that the team that Tariku is associated or a part of, there's going to be 8 catalog tasks that are assigned to the team. So not specifically to him, but specifically assigned to his team. And as you scroll down, you will see all of those spread out, again, with some additional information. And so this, if he wanted to, he could click on this task and he can begin his work from here. But if, on the other hand, Tariku wanted to view the list from a list perspective, we would click on this list tab and we would see our list of filters. Now, our focus is actually going to be under the catalog task, the assigned to me or assigned to my groups. But before we get there, however, I would like to look at a parent ticket for the catalog task, and that is going to be underneath the catalog request area. So when I click on the open catalog request, you're going to find the umbrella ticket that I was talking to you earlier in the original slide, the first slide I showed you. And when you click on it, what you're going to find is a very basic record. It does have details. It shows you who it was created for. It also shows you who created it, but not really much else. So what we're going to do from here is, if you go to related records, you'll find that there is a RITM associated to it, and here it is. And we're going to click on this. Now, when you select the RITM, this will give you a little bit more information. So essentially, it will give you the item that they're requesting for. It will also show you who created it, who it's for. And as we scroll down, it will also show you the variables panel. The variables panel will show you information that was provided when the request was first submitted and created, of course. Now, in this middle panel, this will show you the activity log. And if there's any comments that were submitted by the requester, they would appear here. And so finally, the very last step to get to your actual catalog task would again be to click on related records. And as you guys can see, we have 2 catalog tasks that are associated with the RITM. And here is where the fulfiller would actually do the work. But this is the long way to get to a service catalog task. And so for best practices, the easiest way, because here I'm within a tab, within a tab, within a tab, what I would actually do is I would go to my list, and heading back over underneath catalog task, you can click on assign to me. And here, if there are any particular catalog tasks that are assigned to this particular user, as you can see, there's just one, that here is where you can begin your work. Now, for the purposes of today's session, I'm actually going to go into the assign to my groups. And like I said, all of these are assigned to the team that he's a part of, but not necessarily to him. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on this service catalog task. And here's where I'm going to begin my work. So the first thing I would do would be to assign the record to myself. And so it's a recent selection, so I would go ahead and click save. Now, if I wanted to, I could always go back to my assign to me and I could begin my work there. But if you just want to stay right here, which is what I will be doing, you could, of course, continue your work. So another best practice would be to document whatever it was that you did to fulfill this task. So in this task, let's say right here, it says to create a new account. And so I'm going to, in the compose field, you can enter in a work note. Now, this is an internal note and it is actually not seen by the users. And in the note, I'm going to say created account, period. And then I'm going to post the work notes, and you will see it appear in the activity area. And again, you can see here in parentheses that this is an internal note only. Now, let's go ahead and say that on the back end, you've created the account completely from start to finish. So therefore, this task has now been completed. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to say completed task. Now, rather than posting the comment, what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to click on close task. And this is going to save the note and it's going to close the task at the same time. And so when I do that, you'll see the state has now changed to closed complete. Now, if you wanted to see if the actual request item is fully closed, what you could do is you could go back to the RITM, which is always going to be listed here at the top. And if you click on the RITM, you'll actually see that it's listed as work in progress. And that's because we do have an additional service catalog task that is still opened and still needs to be worked on. And that is why the RITM itself, it's still a work in progress. Okay, so this is an excellent example, again, as to why I wouldn't necessarily go this route to get to your service catalog task, simply because you don't want to accidentally pick up or work on a service catalog task that is not associated to your group. So it would be a lot easier for you to just go back to your list and just go underneath either the assign to me or assigned to your group just to keep it a little bit more clean. Okay. So I'm just going to stop right here just because we went through a lot of tabs. Do we have any questions in the chat or any that I can answer for anyone?
The chat is clear, but anyone have any questions?
All right.
I think we're good.
Excellent. All right. So something else that I want to show you is something that you might be interested in just knowing. It is something that is kind of nice. It's a little handy. So as you guys can see, I'm back underneath my assigned to my groups underneath catalog task. And we've got some tasks here that, let's say I want to quickly assign myself to. So if I select this record, you'll see this edit button appear. And when I click on that, you'll actually notice you can modify or add information on any of these fields. But as a best practice, the only field that I would recommend doing is assigning yourself and then saving it. So this would also be, and if you happen to be a queue manager, this might be a method in which you can assign 2 tickets to one person and 3 tickets to another, and so forth and so on. And so once I click update, you'll see that the records have changed where now the one that I assigned myself will appear underneath assigned to me. And one has disappeared from this area. Okay. And that's really the basics of completing those service catalog tasks. I'm going to click out of these tabs right here, and I'm going to move forward into the OctoHelp's self-service portal. And what we're going to do is we're going to show you a request from beginning to end and essentially do the process from the beginning. And I'm just going to refresh this. Perfect. Okay, and stop me at any point just in case you guys do have any questions. All right, so right now I'm currently in the portal. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a request from scratch. I was going to say record, excuse me. I'm going to show you the steps that are necessary to do this. And this is the process for everyone. So it's not just your end users, it's anyone who wants to raise or generate a request. Underneath the quick links panel, you'll see request something and you'll see report an issue. Now, these two guys are actually going to be, now report an issue will generally be for incidents, and request something is going to be a topic that we're going to touch base on in a later topic later down the line. But essentially the rules are the same. When you click on general request, here is where you will see a number of different requests that will allow you to specify the kind of request that needs to be requested for. So when you click on a request, the form will open up. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the email quarantine release request. And as you scroll down, you'll see additional information. Now, the red asterisk, it means it's a required field. And if it's dark gray, it means it's already been populated. And you'll notice that it's automatically going to populate the name of the user. It'll populate the email address, your phone number, and your agency. And this is all based on information that's already contained in about you in the system. And if you click on this little eye, it will actually give you a preview of the information that is listed associated with Tariku. However, you are able to change the name to someone else if you're creating this request on behalf of another individual simply by clicking in here and typing the name in. Okay. But in this case, we're just going to keep it underneath Tariku. All you would need to do is just click on this X and you would put in that information. Okay. Now, the subjects, the topics and the fields that we need to populate are listed here. So that's going to be subject line of quarantine email, email address of the sender, reason for requesting, and as soon as we, the reason for requesting an email to release from quarantine. Now, if we have any additional time, I'd be happy to show you a more lengthier form. And I definitely has a lot more information that's more required. But what you'll see here is you're going to see all of the required information underneath the panel required information, and that exists underneath that submit button. It will show you all of the remaining required fields. In this case, we can see what's required, but this is very helpful for any form that is a little lengthier. Now, as you start populating in here, let's say need email, please. You'll see that the required information underneath the panel will slowly start to disappear. So I'm going to fill this out real quick. Okay. And as I do this, everything has disappeared. However, if I were to copy this and delete it, and I attempt to submit it, you will receive an error message at the very top in red, and it will navigate you in red at the bottom. And even though I know that's not necessarily something you might do here because you can see everything that's required, some of the more lengthier forms, that might be very helpful. So once we've got this all filled out, we'll go ahead and we're going to click on Submit. Perfect. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and it's going to bring you over to the request summary page. The request summary page will show you when the request was submitted, which is up here. It will show you the request and that umbrella number again. But just keep in mind that this is more for tracking purposes and that you're never really going to have to get into the request just because as you saw, very basic information underneath the request. It also shows you, the actual item or the RITM once we click in here. We'll get there in just a moment. And then for the stage, it shows you where we are in the life cycle. Now, clicking on the item will take us to the actual RITM page. And this gives us more information, specifically what was requested. So there are 3 tabs at the bottom. Activity will show us any actions that have been taken up to this point. So right now, it's simply that the RITM was created. Now, if I wanted to communicate with the fulfillment team, we can add information in this field and we can type a message. So we can say, how long will this take to fulfill? And once I click post, it becomes part of the activity log. Now, if a response is sent to you, the information will also appear under activity and you should receive a notification via email that a response to your question was provided. The attachments tab. This will show you any files that you've added to your request. And if you recall, when we submitted this, we did not add any attachments. And so this is empty. This little icon here will allow me to add any attachments, or I could also drag and drop if I wanted to. In this case, I'm just going to double click and I'm just going to add an attachment in here. And I would be able to edit the name of the attachment if I wanted to. And keep in mind that if you decide to delete the sample or if you decide to delete the attachment, that will also appear under activity. And alternatively, instead of clicking on the attachments tab, of course, the paperclip is here as well. So that would also be an option. Okay. And the very last thing is going to be the additional details tab. And this is just going to show you all the information that was provided when I first submitted the request.
Hey, Jackie.
Okay. Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you zoom in on your screen so people can see what you're talking about? Can you zoom in a little bit?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Does that work? Does that work better? Okay. Wonderful. Okay. All right. Well, so were there any, I was actually going to take a quick pause here before continuing forward. Does anybody have any questions about how I got to this point? Okay. Great. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and actually copy this RITM just for later use, and I'll show you what I'm going to do with that with just a moment. But what I'm actually going to do is show you guys 2 additional ways that you could come to this pathway if you needed to in the future. So for instance, remember in the activity tab, you asked a question. And let's say you step away from this to do work, you come back and you get an email specifying that the question has been answered. In order to get to where I just was from the home page, there's 2 ways. if you click underneath the request section underneath my active tab, you should be able to find the latest RITM or the latest request that you created. And as soon as you click on that, it will take you right back to that request summary in which you can click into the RITM. So that's one way. Additionally, you can also go to My Request. And again, you will be taken to your request page where you can click in to the RITM itself and see if anyone has answered your question. Or again, if you want to make any posts, any attachments, delete any attachments, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So we're going to head back, actually. We're going to head right back to where we were. And hopefully this is a little bit bigger. My apologies if it was too small the first time around. Now I am actually going to utilize our handy dandy search bar here, and I'm going to copy and paste. And this is going to be not necessarily the workflow that you would take. You would take the one that I showed you originally, but just to kind of help you understand and help this kind of be full circle, this is the RITM. And so within the RITM, here you can see the, excuse me, here you can see the activities panel. Now, something to note is that this is where you're going to see the attachment. You'll also see the questions as well inside of the RITM. So it is something to note that going back to your related records, this is where you would see that service catalog task and where you would begin work. Again, I would recommend going through your assigned to my groups. But as you can see, that question that Tariku actually asked is actually back in the RITM. And so there is something to going into the RITM and actually seeing if any questions or any activity was done on the end of the user. So that's just something to point out for you guys. Okay, and with this, essentially you would follow the exact same steps on how to complete a service task once you're in the service task, which would be right here. And that's really it. Does anybody have any questions for me? We have a lot of extra time, so I'd be happy to go over anything else or answer any questions for anyone.
And if anyone has any like scenarios that they would like for Jackie to walk through for them, especially when it comes to managing or in processing request management, please feel free to ask her these questions so to understand the best practices.
Mm-hmm. All right.
All right, no questions? And she went through everything. Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you, Jackie. So everyone that was part of the brown bag, if anyone has any questions right now regarding request management, let us know if you think of something after the session. I will put in the details of the training recording and also have some help articles on request management that I will provide to you at the end of this meeting in the chat. And also the survey, please, if you don't mind submitting the surveys on all of our brown bags regarding our training, the content, the topics that we choose. We really need your feedback and value your feedback regarding our training. So I'm going to put everything in the chat. I want to thank New Rocket, Jackie for facilitating the training today. Thank you so much. And Joseph from New Rocket, I want to thank you. I want to thank everyone for joining. In our next session, next week, it's a break we'll have for Thanksgiving. So our next session will be, I believe it's
December 1st, I think.
We have
right.
one before that. It's like
Okay.
November 30th, I believe.
Oh, okay. I was not sure what day Wednesday is.
Oh, yeah. So the next session will be next week, but the following Wednesday. And I believe that's the last week of November. So please register for that one. I believe that session. Let me actually get that up for a second. And if everyone has not
I
checked
think
out our
you're
brown
froze.
bag. Did I freeze? Did
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
you was
freeze?
frozen.
Oh,
It
okay,
was funny.
sorry. Okay, so the next session is change management, and that's Wednesday, November 30th. And then the last session of the series is universal request integration incident management, and that is December 7th. So I will put the registration link within the chat so you guys can register. I apologize if people registered and they didn't get the automatic calendar invite. I apologize. So I'm going to work on that and make sure when you guys register for the next sessions, it'll automatically get sent to your calendar. So thank you everyone for joining the ServiceNow Brown Bag series, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.
Everybody.
Bye.
Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.